Thank you very much for having me. Thanks for inviting me. It's a terrific event to be at, and it's been wonderful just in the last 30 minutes or so to meet so many friends and colleagues from UK and from around the world. So it's great to be here. And yes, I'm the Chief Exec of the MHRA, and I believe we have a very important role to play in the system, which I'm going to outline over a few minutes. But the majority of my career actually hasn't been as a regulator. It's been running frontline health services in Guy's and St Thomas's that people will probably be familiar with, London, formerly Birmingham, and overseas. So much of my career has been dedicated to working with principal investigators, with clinical innovators, to get breakthrough science to patients as safely and expediently as possible. And that is the mindset which I come to regulation with. And I think when we talk about rare diseases, it would be fair to say, both at an individual patient level and at a system level, we have had a deficit of hope in the past. Too many people with rare diseases underserved by the system. But I believe we're now at a pivotal moment, enabled by innovative, agile, trusted regulation, where we can offer far more hope for the future, and that will be my theme for this talk. So I probably don't need to spend a lot of time with this very informed audience talking to you about the nature of the problem we face. But I will just recap, because some of these statistics bear repeating, just to really look ourselves in the face at the scale of the issue we're facing. Some 300 million people around the world with one or other rare disease. 3.5 million people just in this country alone. But yet, only 5% of these diseases have a viable treatment option. So this has been a major global and national public health issue, and one that has been really woefully underserved for many, many years. And the cost, of course, both in human terms and in economic terms, is enormous. And I know from looking around the room, some of the people I know, we experience this not only as professionals, but personally, through children, through family members, through personal connections. Too often, people waiting years and years for a diagnosis, going round the system underserved. A significant proportion of children who don't make it to adulthood and in fact die in early childhood. Families with enormous emotional strain, and again, I know many of the people in the room who experience this at a parental or family level from their own experience. And of course, huge societal financial cost in terms of treatment, lost productivity of people who could be productive members of the workforce and are not. So the case for change is enormous and is compelling. But the good bit, of course, as we all know, and people around this room certainly know, is science is no longer the barrier that it was. Those only 5% of treatment options, it needn't be that way anymore. We have the science, we have the technology to meet this public health challenge. What we haven't yet done is translated that science through system changes, regulatory, reimbursement, medicines development, to get that science into patients more quickly. Advances in genomics and genetic treatments. The fact that we can now genuinely personalize and individualize a medicine to rare subvariants of disease, or even highly individual subvariants of diseases. But we know the problem, of course, is that the traditional regulatory pathway that people like me now oversee is built for highly prevalent diseases, the classic phase 1, 2, 3, large-scale trials that just don't work in small population groups. So we've been trying now to take this new science and shoehorn it into a regulatory paradigm that is built for a different category of disease, and that is just straining at the seams. It doesn't work anymore, and it's preventing us getting these new scientific possibilities to patients. So we need system-level change. And we believe in this country, this is a global issue, of course, but in this country we do have some unique strengths and advantages. A single integrated health system with whole population, birth to grave, longitudinal, multimodal data, which is being brilliantly curated, or will be in the coming years, I should give some time, brilliantly curated by the Health Data Research Service, and you'll be hearing from Mel Iverson later about that work. We have, of course, a very mature genomic infrastructure through the enlightened investment in Genomics England over many years, through Our Future Health, through UK Biobank. So we have the tools, we have the data, we have the heterogeneous population to develop these therapeutics in this country. So this country can be a place that genuinely leads the way. And we say that a lot of the time. But in the case of rare disease therapeutics, this country genuinely can be a leader. And there are people around this room I know from other jurisdictions, including the more traditional. I'll project until the mic comes back. Can you hear me back? Yeah. Is there a hand up? Okay. I'm not sure I should wander with it, but I'll bend it to my will. So the more traditional home of breakthrough biomedical science in America, people now in America, some around this room, are looking to the UK as the place that may be able to crack this puzzle about regulation, reimbursement, and system uptake. We have the opportunity in this country. And so recognising this challenge and recognising this can be a place where the UK genuinely does lead the way, we've brought together a terrific consortium of key interested parties, including, of course, LifeArc. And thank you again, LifeArc, for putting this terrific event on. But you see many others there on that slide, and I have to give credit to the Rare Disease Therapeutics Launchpad, which really kick-started this work, quite literally launched this work, which is now being taken to the Rare Disease Consortium. And huge credit to my colleague Julian Beach for the work he's done, and I know many, many people around the room will join me in thanking him for his leadership in this area. So we brought together key partners. Most importantly, we are genuinely hearing the voices of patients and patient advocates in this work to make sure that we're designing a regulatory paradigm that genuinely puts patients at the forefront of our thinking. Now, when I came to the MHRA, fantastic institution though it is, had a couple of rocky years, but a fantastic institution, the catchphrase was putting patients first. And I absolutely found a group of public servants, committed professionals who deeply believe in putting patients first. But what do we mean by putting patients first? Well, of course, we need to keep patients safe, goes without saying. But when someone has a severe disease where the prognosis is incredibly poor, and we have a scientific potential to cure that disease, clearly we need to calibrate the risk-benefit differently, and we need to let patients be empowered. So I don't believe in regulation being paternalistic and saying this is what you can and can't have. I believe regulation is about framing the reasonable parameters of choice and then allowing patients to make those choices for themselves, for their children, with their clinicians and caregivers. And so we have, people say to me sometimes, how do you get the regulator to think differently? Well, clearly some of it's about data and evidence. Some of the numbers I just showed you, regulators are the kind of people who respond to data. But it's also about emotion and genuinely understanding the viewpoint of patients. So we've had some very, very powerful speakers who themselves have rare disease or have had rare diseases, or who are the parents of rare diseases, come and speak to our group about how they see it through their eyes. And we've had, I'm not ashamed to tell you, we've had tears in the group, we've had genuine emotion in the group. And these are regulators, these are not people overly given to sort of demonstrative displays of emotion. But it's changing the mindset about what really is in the best interest of patients. What do they really want? And how can we as a regulator facilitate that change? So this slide for me is the most powerful point I wanted to make in this whole talk, really understanding what does it mean to put patients first. Don't assume, don't be paternalistic, find out from the patients what they want, and can we facilitate that through legitimate, safe, innovative regulation. So the core idea here is what we're terming the investigational marketing authorization. So instead of having the traditional phase 1, 2, 3 clinical trial approach, fine for highly prevalent diseases, not fine for small population diseases, and then into marketing authorization, we will concertina that process into a single iterative series of checks and iterations that allows us to deploy these rare disease therapeutics more quickly, more efficiently to patients, build the evidence as we go. And that is the core idea of the new rare diseases framework that we'll be publishing in a couple of weeks, or what is it now? No, it's about a week or 2 weeks. Julian, 10 days. Now, I think in the interest of time, I don't really have the time to go through this in some detail, but what I would say is in 10 days' time, do look out for this publication, which is, we believe, is going to set the path for rare disease therapeutics, or the regulation of rare disease therapeutics in the years ahead, certainly in this country, and hopefully with application to other countries. And the key point, of course, is there has to be clear designation. So we are talking about genuinely rare or ultra rare, 1 in 50,000 or fewer. There will have to be clear evidence of unmet need and severity before we designate one of those rare disease therapeutics in this pathway. The crucial bit is the early alignment between regulator and product developer. So we don't want to wait until the end and find that we didn't know what you were bringing forward and you didn't know what we were going to ask. We want to do that early and aligned. Risk proportionate in that way I've just described, of really understanding what do the patients need, how severe is their disease, and what is the potential of ameliorating that disease. We'll be using prior, predictive, and real-world data, so novel approaches to data use, different to the traditional clinical trials approach. And we'll be defining what we understand by platform approvals. Now, platform approvals are used in many, many different ways. In fact, I think if you ask everyone in this room to define a platform approval, you'll get as many slightly different answers as there are people in the room. So we'll be setting out what we mean by platform approvals. But an example of that, we believe, is already starting to make progress, again, with huge credit to some of the people in the room. We had the first ever approval of a master protocol for genetic medicines by the MHRA last year in this country, which was published early this week, deployed in Great Ormond Street, 10 children able to be treated under this master protocol. So it is starting to happen, it is starting to change in the real world, and the framework we're bringing forward will start to put the parameters around how we can do that at scale. So I believe now we genuinely, and differently to a generation ago, we do have hope for a better future for people affected by rare diseases. This is a major but now solvable problem. We have the scientific tools. We just need the alignment of regulation, reimbursement, and the system uptake to bring those tools to patients. There is a huge economic opportunity, certainly for this country. We know that every pound invested in R&D brings £7 of economic return to the economy. But most importantly, and this is why I think most of us come to work, we really have the opportunity to change the lives for the better of people who a generation ago may have had a very poor prognosis, and we can bring them hope for the future. And this, I'm just going to leave you with this final slide, which is, to me, what we mean by hope for the future. Now, I said at the start that until just over a year ago, I worked in hospitals, not as a regulator. And this is a slide about spinal muscular atrophy, and people will remember the Zolgensma therapy that came out a little while ago. And I was at Guy's and St Thomas's, and the Evelina London Children's Hospital, of course, is part of Guy's and St Thomas's, and it was the first place in this country where Zolgensma was used for the treatment of spinal muscular atrophy. And you see there a couple of little girls who had that treatment. And let's be clear, this is a really devastating disease, be familiar to many people around the room. Many, many children will not make it beyond their 5th birthday. And we can now offer hope to these families, to these children. In fact, one of the parents of a little boy who'd had this treatment at the Evelina came and spoke to our group at the MHRA. Sorry, I beg your pardon, wrote a piece for our group at the MHRA, and he spoke at a conference that I was at the other day. And that's how you get the mindset shifted. The thing I will tell you is lots of people here probably work in the NHS or work with the NHS. And if anywhere is in need of hope at the moment, I think it's the NHS. And there's a few knowing giggles. We all know what we're talking about here. It's not a great period of time in the NHS because of the pressures of an elderly population, chronic disease, system pressures. But for the reasons I said earlier, we can still do genuinely special things in this country. We can be a place where children, patients with severe and rare diseases can have cures or treatments that they can't have in many other parts of the world. We can do special things. And when this happened at the Evelina, I can tell you there's about 25,000 people working Giles and St Thomas's. Probably, well, certainly less than 1% of those people actually met these children. Because you know what big hospitals are like, you don't all meet all the children. But the halo effect that this had when Zolgensma came out within Evelina was transformational. Everywhere around the organisation, people had a smile on their face because they were part of something that was genuinely special. And the mood that it gave to lift the whole organisation that we were part of doing this, even if you weren't someone who was part of the actual caregiving team yourself, the fact you're in an organisation that can bring this treatment forward to children and give them a hope of a new life and their parents a hope of seeing their children grow up, that's a very, very special thing. It's why we come to work. And it is hope for the future. However, there's a watch out here, which is if you look at the two girls in that picture, the older girl had the treatment later. I think she was 5 when she had it, and so is now in a wheelchair. The younger girl had it much earlier and therefore benefited earlier. So it's not just about getting the treatments to patients, it's about getting it to patients quickly because these patients cannot wait for what is now available for them. So I hope that's given you something of a rallying cry. I hope that's been maybe a little bit different to what you might always expect from a regulator when they stand up on a stage. But I hope we are huge respect for regulators, by the way, combined in our shared mission to give hope for a better future to patients with rare diseases. And I commend the work of the conference. Thank you very much.